Greetings and welcome to another installment from the Patchwork Productionz Learn to Crochet for Beginners series. In this video, you will learn about working in the front loop and the back loop. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Stitch, and Patchwork Productionz is all about learning and doing crochet. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss another installment. Without further ado, let's get started. So for this video, you're going to need some weight 4 or medium worsted weight yarn, and I will be using a US J10 or 5.75 millimeter hook. And today's tutorial isn't going to be anything too special. It's going to cover something I haven't covered, a very basic principle or idea in crochet, which is using the front or the back loops. I haven't covered it yet, but it is a very important piece in crochet. Its importance is there for two reasons. Number one, using either the front or the back loop can make a nice texture stitch, which I will show you in a moment. And also, there's a concept that comes from this that's used in at least a few projects that I've used, but I know that they're used in different projects. So first, I will show you the difference with each of the front and back loops. So remember that a stitch is always easily identified by the V's that you see at the top of the stitch. This is a row of 8 single crochets that I've done here. And so you can just see these V's made from the single crochets at the top. And you would see these stitches if I had worked half double crochet, treble crochet. Doesn't matter what stitch you work here, you'll see these V's here, so it helps us to easily identify a stitch. And so the V's, there's always one side of the V and then the other side of the V. So you have the one strand here and the one strand there. And so when we say the front or the back loop, depending on which side of the work is facing you, the loop of the V that's facing you or towards the front is the front loop, and the V side of the V that's facing away from you at the back of the work, that's going to be the back loop. So before I made this turning chain, this was my front loop here, and this was my back loop here. But after I've done this turning chain, turn my work, this would be me starting to work row 2. You're going to have this side being the front loop and this side being the back loop. So it's just dependent on which way is facing you. So had I done a row and worked in the front loop here, when I turn it, it would have been as if I worked in the back loop had I done that row with it facing this way. A little confusing to say, but basically whether it's front or back is just determined on which way the work is facing when you're working in the project. So I have my turning chain, turned my work, and I'm going to show you working in the front loop. And there's also another reason to work in the front loop, which I will explain afterwards. But basically, you just do it like a normal stitch, except instead of going under both V's like you normally do, you only go through that one loop. So as you can see here, I'm choosing to work in only the front loop. And so I'm going to put my hook there. But if you see at the back, the other strand of that V is still there. You can see that there. So instead of going under both like you normally would, you just go under one. So you come right in between, and in this case I'm doing the front loop. So now I can just make a regular single crochet. And so we're going to do that again in the next stitch. Instead of going under both, we're just going to go under one, which will be in the middle. So you can see that there. And we're going to work the single crochet. So basically, no matter what stitch you're doing, working in the front or back loop, in this case I'm working in the front loop, you just work it like the normal stitch. Nothing changes except how you go through those stitches. You just go through one of the loops of the V's in this case the one in the front. And now what this does is, if I were to turn my work right here, and you can see at the back, it's a little hard to notice, but what I'll do is I'll finish the rest of them in both loops so you can see. But if you look really closely here, you'll see like these little lines, these ridges going here along this side, and I'll explain what that's called in a moment. Let me first finish making these, so hopefully there will be a greater contrast for you to see. So I'm just working these last four, I'm just working these last four, working the single crochets in both loops. So the first four I worked in the front loop only, and the last four I worked in both loops. So from the front, there's less of a difference that you can see, although there is a small difference. It's a little easier to see in person than on camera, but maybe you can see it. But now if we flip it to the back, you can see here these ridges that are formed by working in the front loop only. And these 4 stitches here are worked in the back loop. These 4 stitches here are worked in both loops. And so, as you can see here, they don't have this little ridge that these have. They just have the holes here because they were worked under both. But here, they have these little ridges. This ridge here is what's known as a free loop. The free loop doesn't really have a purpose, but it can be made to have a purpose. I've worked some amigurumi projects where it's like a lion, and the head of the lion, one of the rounds, they asked me to work in the back loop only, it was. And so what happened was these free loops were left at the top. So later in the project, they told me to work the mane of the lion into the free loops. So there's a little, I guess you could say, practical example of how free loops are used. But free loops can basically be used in any way that the person making the project, or you, if you're doing your own thing, decides. So that's what working in the front loop does, because we worked in the front loop only here. So then when we turn our work, let me chain 1, turn the work, that is the result that we'll have on the other side. Now, back loop only is basically the same thing, except instead of going in just the front or under both, we're gonna go through the back. So it's a pretty simple idea, and again, you just make it like the normal stitch. So again, we're not going under both, we're not going under just the first one, but we're going to go under the back one. And so this is crocheting in the back loop only. And so again, I'm going to make 4 of these. I have 3 here, so let's do one more. So we have 4 stitches worked in the back loop only, and then I'm going to work 4 stitches through both loops. Just like this. And so again, you'll see that where we worked in the back loop only, this time it's on the front that the free loop is left. And it should be easy to understand, because basically you had the little V's at the top here, and by working in just this stitch, this loop that would have been worked into had we done both, but we only did the back, that loop is left, and so it sticks out in the front. Whereas with the front loop, we work into the front one, and so this loop at the back that would have been worked to is left. And so if you work a front loop only, then you'll have the free loop on the back, and if you work the back loop only, you'll have the free loop on the front. So makes sense. And so again, we have these free loops here, and the ones where we worked both loops, we do not have the free loops. Now, again, this is a very basic idea. There's nothing too special to it, but under knowing about front loop and back loop can, number one, save you trouble, and number two, it can be used in pretty unique ways. I'll tell you this much. When I first started crocheting, I did not realize something very important. The standard, generally, for crocheting is that you work through both loops. I didn't realize this, and so I always used to work in the back loop. I didn't know I was supposed to work through both. Here's what happened. Projects started to look a lot different. Generally, unless the project instructs you, you want to work through both loops. Because when you're working in just one of the loops, number one, especially if it's the back loop, you'll get little ridges going around your project. And so it will not look right. I have made hats, stuffed animals, all in the back loop, and I never wondered why they didn't look as smooth as they were in the picture. And that's because I always had those free loops running around my project for every single round I did, or whatever I was making, mostly round-based projects. So that's one reason not to do it. The second reason, which I kind of think is more critical than just aesthetics, when you work in just the front or the back loop, the overall size of the project is going to grow. I found this, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think it's because this loop, you can basically pull it. See, I'm pulling just one of those stitches, one of the loops of one of the stitches, and making it look much larger than the others. So even if I go under both of the loops, I can't get it to the same height. So the idea that I see here is that basically this one loop takes the height of both of the loops. Not perfectly, but enough of it that it's almost doubled in size. So your project will almost be double the size that it's supposed to be if you only work in the front or the back loop for the entire project. So that's something serious to consider, because again, as you can see, if I pull both loops, they only get but so big, but then I can pull just one and make it rather large. And so, just from my personal experience, it's definitely something to remember that the standards that you work under both of those V's when you're crocheting, unless the project says, you know, work in the front loop only for these stitches, work in the back loop only for these stitches, etc., and so on. Something else that's nice to know with the front loop only specifically is that there is a special decrease that is known as the invisible decrease, and there are a few different renditions of this, but let me just show you briefly. Just do a regular single crochet here. Basically, the idea is that free loop left on the back makes the front look smooth. So if I just work the back loop, you can see that that free loop is left on the front. But if I work the front loop, this one on this side, it's you can't really tell that I worked in the front loop until you look at the back and see the free loops. So the idea is that the invisible decrease utilizes working in the front loop only for the decrease so that it's harder to notice. So it makes a cleaner finish. So let me demonstrate a regular decrease and then the front loop only, or the invisible decrease, so that hopefully you can see the difference. So I'll just do a regular single crochet decrease where it's single crochet 2 together. And so if we pull these together, we have it as such. I think I did that right. Yep, put them through, pull it through all three, and we've done a single crochet 2 together. And now I can do the invisible decrease, which actually looks like this. We're going to insert it through the front loop, and then we're going to go back in. We're not going to yarn over, we're just going to go into the front loop of the next stitch, and then we're going to work it as one stitch. So we're going to draw a loop through both of those, and now we're going to finish the single crochet as normal. And hopefully you can see the difference, maybe not on camera, but maybe you can try it at home and see the difference between these two. This one's a lot bulkier because it took more loops mashed together, whereas this one only took 2 loops like a normal stitch would. A normal stitch always just takes 2 loops. So this one took the 2 front ones to join 2 stitches into one, and you just work it like a regular single crochet instead of yarning over and drawing through 3 loops. So it just makes it look a lot better, and you can do a variation of this for the double crochet. The idea behind the invisible decrease is just that you treat the 2 front loops of the stitches you're trying to join together as one, and then work the stitches normal. So if I were doing the double crochet, I would yarn over, I would insert through the first one, and then without yarning over again, I would just insert into the second one, remember staying only in the front loops, draw my loop through both of those because we're going to treat that like one stitch, and now I have 3 loops on the hook, right? So I can just work it like a normal double crochet, draw through 2, and I have it, and it looks a lot better. And as I said, principle applies to any of the stitches. So there's a nice rendition, something you can do with working in the front loop only. In addition to that, you can just do textured patterns. So for one row or for a part of the row, you can do front loop only, next part back loop only, and it creates the free loop ridge that just, makes a nice pattern. So something different, something special that you can do with only working in the front or back loop. Again, I really want to stress this point because it was a pain for me when I first started. When you're working with a standard project, 9 times out of 10, if anything, 99 times out of 100, they're gonna want you to just work under both loops unless the project directs, in which case it'll say front loop or back loop only. And I believe the crochet abbreviations for those, front loop only would be FLO, and back loop only will be BLO. I believe that's what it is. I don't think there are any fancy differences between certain pattern writers, but that should be what it is. If you see that in a pattern, most likely it's going to mean front loop only or back loop only. And so this is a basic tutorial teaching you about how to work in only the front loop or only the back loop, a way to make a textured stitch, or with the front loop you can do invisible decrease, or you can use the free loops to crochet something extra on there. You can just treat it like a normal stitch, insert your hook into that little strand, and you can crochet on top of your work. So there's a few different things that you can do with the front loop and back loops of crochet stitches. Also, it's done precisely the same if you're working in the round. This was done in the row, but if you're working in the round, it's the same principle. Standard is working through both, but you can work in the front or the back, and they can be used all the same in the row or the round. So this is a simple video for that, and that will be all for this video. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to learn more about crochet, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and also share this video with your friends and family or on social media. And feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or suggestions or any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, catch you later.